Did one phone call from Saudi Arabia's crown prince change President Trump's mind about striking Iran? Trump says new negotiations with Iran will begin on Monday. Now, that's quite the turnaround because on Friday, Trump told his cabinet he was losing faith with the Iranians over their inability to agree to a peace deal. And he called Iran's leaders liars and threatened to hit the country very hard. But by Saturday night, his tone had changed. In a post on his Truth Social platform, Trump said even though the U.S. was locked and loaded, he was calling off the planned strikes, claiming Iran and other Middle Eastern countries had asked him to hold off, hinting at the outline of a deal coming together. That would mean reopening the Strait of Hormuz and ending Iran's nuclear ambitions. He added that Israel backed the pause too, although Israel itself hasn't confirmed that. Now, it's not the first time Trump has made this kind of warning. Back in April, he threatened to destroy Iran's whole civilization if Tehran refused to negotiate. Now, this time, the reversal came right after a call between Trump and Saudi Arabia's de facto leader, Mohammed bin Salman. The Saudi state media say the crown prince called for de-escalation and diplomacy, stressing the need to prioritize dialogue to reduce escalation and the importance of making every possible effort to achieve calm that paves the way for diplomatic solutions. Now, the pair are understood to have spoken about the deepening crisis before Trump's social media announcement. So, does Saudi Arabia now have more sway over Trump on Iran than Israel or America's European allies? And has the kingdom become the most important mediator in the Middle East? To dissect all that, I am joined now by Sina Azodi, Program Director of Middle East Studies from the Elliott School of International Affairs at George Washington University. Good to have you back with us. Is the timing here convincing enough to say the Saudi call changed Trump's mind, or is this a coincidence?
Well, I think that I'm sure it has had some influence over Trump, but also we have had instances, as you were pointing out, that Donald Trump has said something extremely, unusual for a U.S. president, and including the one you just mentioned, destroying Iran's civilization or sending Iran back to the Stone Age. And then he has changed his mind without somebody calling him. He does this quite often. For him, perhaps he thinks that, the other side is forced to blink or chickens out. I'm not really sure, but I'm sure that, some people, some elements in the administration have, informed him that the other side also gets a turn. And that is to, if Iran's power plants are attacked, the Iranians could potentially attack the entire energy production facilities in the region. They have the means and the willingness of doing so, and that would send the entire global energy markets, I want to say, to the Stone Age. That's crazy. So this is perhaps why he changed his mind.
We'll talk more on that in just a second, but still on the Saudis, just wondering what gives the Saudis this leverage with Trump in a way that other allies haven't been able to sway him?
Well, President Trump is somebody who relies more on personal relationships rather than state-to-state relationships and, the usual diplomatic protocols. And he has had some good relations with the Crown Prince, and who's the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia. So I think, that also has played a role in perhaps changing President Trump's decision.
Right. Now, even though Trump says Israel is in line, we haven't heard yet from the Israelis on this latest development. I don't know, can we read anything into their silence?
Well, again, going back to President Trump's personality, I would say that if had been any other president that had made a decision without, coordinating with the Israelis first, they would have said something publicly. But I don't think that the Prime Minister of Israel is inclined to publicly, at least, question President Trump or try to embarrass him publicly. We have to also keep in mind that he was just in Washington, D.C. So I think that personal relationship between the two leaders also plays a role. And we had an instance a while back that Axios had reported that President Trump had yelled at Prime Minister of Israel, telling him that without him, without the president, Prime Minister of Israel would have been in jail. So again, this is a president that is not like any other American president.
Right, and on that note, as we mentioned earlier, making threats of strikes and then pulling back, does this undermine the credibility of the threat itself when he does this?
I think so. Look, President Trump has done enormous damage to the credibility of America when it comes to its relations with its NATO allies, threatening to invade a NATO ally, publicly embarrassing them, including in the case of Spain, so on and so forth. It has also damaged the U.S. credibility in making commitments and promises. Last time I think you and I were talking was on the Saudi nuclear deal. And the next day, President changed his mind and he said the deal is not going to happen unless Saudis would recognize Israel. So I think with this president, there has been a lot of damage to the U.S. credibility. It's the wars of the American president, the wars of the United States. And in the case of Iran, we have to keep in mind that this is the president who withdrew the United States from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2018. It attacked Iran twice while the Americans and Iranians were negotiating. So it has done a great deal of damage to U.S. reputation as a reliable ally and a negotiating partner.
Right. Do you think issues at home as well could have had an impact or influenced Trump? For example, gas prices, war fatigue, domestic politics. Do you think that could have also influenced his decision to pursue these talks?
Perhaps. Again, we have to keep in mind that this war is one of the very few wars, if not the only American war in recent history, that the American public from the beginning opposed it, and it has even gotten worse right now, meaning that the Iran war, from the perspective of Americans, is a war of choice. It's unpopular, and many have questioned the administrations, many in the US, have questioned the need to actually start the war and continuing it and its effect on the U.S. economy. There was just some reporting that the growth of U.S. economy has slowed because of the war. The inflation has gone up, and of course we have the midterm elections coming. And of course there are some Republican senators who are, they may not say it publicly, but privately are concerned about their own political careers because of a war that is extremely unpopular among the Americans, Republican and Democrats.
If these talks are to go ahead, as Trump says on Monday, what would need to happen for this renewed scenario to have a more effective outcome in the journey towards peace?
Look, I think the initial memorandum of understanding that was signed in June was a very good first step. The problem was the vague language of that MOU. And so I think anything that is signed, it has to be clear in technical details, explicitly stating the status of the Strait of Hormuz. We are now seeing that Iranians and the Omanis are negotiating on how to arrange the passage of ships through the strait. And we have to keep in mind the main reason that the MOU, the first MOU fell apart, was the paragraph 5 of that MOU, which discussed the details of how ships will sail through the strait. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. And I think Iranians have to see that they are getting the benefits of the US commitments, and that is sanctions relief, because Iranians are desperate for economic relief. Their economy has been damaged. The inflation, the official inflation rate in Iran is right now, according to the government statistics, is about 68%, and I'm sure it's higher. Unemployment is high because of the war. So they need sanctions relief, and they need it very quickly.
Let's go back to the Saudis again. Saudi Arabia and other OPEC, I guess OPEC plus producers have just raised their combined output cap for September. I'm just wondering, does this give the Saudis more incentive, more than anyone else, to see this deal actually hold?
Yes, because we have to keep in mind that 20% of the Saudi oil exports go through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there's a pipeline that goes through the Saudis and to the Bab el-Mandeb, which kind of tries to avoid the strait. But there we have the Houthis, who have announced a blockade on the Saudis, and they're trying to put a chokehold on that critical chokehold, international chokehold, which puts the Saudi exports in jeopardy. This is why the Saudis, not because of their love with Iran, they are rivals with Iranians, but they also need this war to end quickly, because first of all, they are going to be caught in the crossfire between Iranians and Americans. And second, their oil revenues will go down. So this is why they want this war to end as quickly as possible.
Okay. Oman and Qatar have been the other mediators from the region since the war began. Do you expect to see the Saudis step ahead of them and take on a bigger role, both in the upcoming talks and also just generally in future?
Well, Saudis have always tried to become the kind of the de facto leader of the GCC countries, and I'm pretty sure they have some sway with President Trump. But Oman and Qatar are better mediators, I believe, because first of all, Oman has for decades has had very good relations with Iranians, going back to the time of the Shah. And the secret negotiations between Iran and the US over the nuclear agreement that ended with the JCPOA started with the help of the Omanis. Even before this war started, Omanis were mediating between Iranians and Americans. And on February 26, a day before the war, the Omani foreign minister came on TV and urged President Trump to give diplomacy more time, which still didn't happen. But still, again, Iranians have very good relations with the Omanis. And in the case of Qatar, again, they have been on the receiving side of some of the Iranian attacks, but they still, among the GCC countries, they have good relations with Iranians. They also have very good relations with President Trump. Again, Air Force One was gifted to, the new Air Force One was gifted by the Qataris. So they have good relations with both of them. So this is why I think they're better mediators than the Saudis.
So, I mean, with what we've been seeing from Mohammed bin Salman, obviously the Saudis trying to stake their position as the regional leader. You don't see this sort of as a step for them to position themselves, you know, not just on this, but just in terms of their global status as a regional power, as a mediator, as a sort of force to be reckoned with.
Well, I think they already are because of their economic power. But I think in this particular case, they can be one of the mediators, one of the, you may call them people who try to influence President Trump's decision making. But I think because there has always been some rivalry between Iranians and the Saudis, we have to keep in mind that the very same MBS that called President Trump a few years ago compared the late Ayatollah Khamenei with Hitler. And he said, you know, we don't negotiate. Why should we negotiate with them? So again, there's a lot of rivalry between them. But I think that still Saudis are one of the actors that can have a positive influence because, as you said, because of their regional status and their economic power and ability to impact global oil, energy markets.
Interesting. Sina Azodi, it's been great speaking to you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And so what do you think? Are the Saudis going to have an even bigger regional role after the Iran conflict? And how will the dynamics of the Middle East change? Let's know your thoughts in the comments. Till next time, I'm Tomi Oladipo. Thank you for watching.